Greetings YouTubers and welcome to another Allison Automotive video. This is a racing Puma number 263 out of 500. So again, just like the previous video, I've cut out all the bits where removing the gearbox, removing the exhaust manifold, gear linkage separator, the aircon pump separator, disconnected the engine mounts and obviously drained all the fluids. And we're just about to take the engine out of this. I'm just applying the flywheel locking tool here, just so it's nice and easy to undo the bottom vibration damper pulley on the other side of the crankshaft a bit later. Just removing the clutch and flywheel now, so that I can mount the whole engine to the stand. Here I'm changing the rear crankshaft retainer seal, so that later when I take the sump sections off I can reseal the upper sump section onto the new retainer plate. Saves a bit of faff later on. Just mounting the engine to the stand now in 4 positions, but making sure not to bolt up to the sump sections and to the block only, so that I can still remove the sump sections. Just messing about with the pipes a little bit here. One thing that drives you slightly crazy is the coolant. And there never seems to be any end to it. You touch a pipe or you move the engine and you get another ½ litre of coolant all over the floor. Just fiddling with the alternator bolts here. Just undoing the 2 support braces here for the inlet. I always think these are a bit of a joke, to be honest. They don't really provide hardly any support at all. And quickly we get into the issue already of trying to get to this stupid bolt buried in the middle there that's got the Allen key head on it, which in this case is ridiculously seized. I've obviously decided to go on to other things here and come back to the alternator in a minute. Cam covers off and on to removing the engine mount now. Just before I apply this bottom pulley removal tool, I'm going to put an M8 thread tap through the holes here just to clean out these threads, because they're usually very rusty, and that will make the tool nice and easy to work. Removing both cam pulleys here. Here I'm using my extra long ring spanner here. Without this you've got almost no chance of getting this inlet off, because there's a bolt in the middle that's very awkward to get to. An interesting little predicament with these engines. You can't really get the inlet off because the alternator is in the way because of the bolt at the side of the inlet, and it's extremely difficult to get the alternator off because the inlet's in the way, and because there's a bolt down here with an Allen head on it instead of a standard head that you just can't really get onto because the inlet pipe is in the way. So it really is a pain in the arse. But I shall keep persevering. As you'll see, I'm having a bit of faff with this bolt. I usually just sort of tap an Allen key in there and then just twist it round with a pair of pliers, but this one is a little bit more seized than usual and I'm having just a bit of a la-la with it. Oof. Fuck me! That was ridiculous. They're not normally as bad as that. That was very seized. So I basically hammered an Allen key into it and then just managed to turn it with some pliers. It's still quite seized, even though I've managed to loosen it. Ideally I could do with a long, somehow sort of flexible 6mm Allen key, if there is such a thing. Maybe I could get a long Allen key with a drive on the end of it. I shall do some hunting, because that was a bit of a pain in the arse. At last we can get the alternator off now. Moving on to removing the inlet now. Okay, time to see how much oil flies out of this inlet. Yeah, pretty caked up as usual. A bit of a mess. Don't know whether you can see that in there, probably not, because it's not the worst one I've seen by far. But it is quite oily. And we hit another unexpected snag at the coolant housing. Usually this takes 10 seconds to take off, but all 4 bolts are so rusted here, the heads have just completely disintegrated, and I end up smacking a female Torx head onto each bolt to try and get them off, which took a bit of faff. Hey! Got that one moving. That's a friggin' nightmare. This one. Imagine trying to get that off with it in the car. Not a chance. The casing of the water pump is actually in the way of getting on the bolt. There we go. All good fun.
I had that usual issue here where you're trying to turn the oil filter around, you're getting your gloves plastered in oil, and you can't actually move it around because you're slipping all over the place. On to removing the cam top cover now.
Okay, so on with the messy part of the service. As you can see, it's quite dirty, quite oily around here. And I'm going to paint this engine as well, so it's a long way away from getting any paint anywhere near it at the moment. So I'm going to get a good clean down. I've loosened off the head bolts, but I'm just going to leave that head on there for a little bit longer, just till I've cleaned under here. And then I'll take the head off. See you later.
Hope you enjoyed that. Well, on with the next snag. I had major difficulty getting this crank sensor out here. I've chopped a load of it out on the video, but it took a fair bit of messing about. What should have been another 10-second job.
Ugh. Got you bugger.
And okay, so just going to give that area a clean in there, just so I can paint it. And next, time to move the engine around a bit and clean around the front side. Again, just using a mixture of brushes and a brass wheel and loads of brake cleaner. Moving around to the back of the engine now. Always a fair bit of cleaning up here. Usually get a load of dust flying in your face and all sorts, and it's got the goggles on. You can hear on this bit of video here there's a plane coming into land, and I've got my door open as I live reasonably near East Midlands Airport. You can actually hear it coming into land there. The engine's getting a fair bit cleaner now. With this painted option on the engine service, there's a lot of cleaning going on just to get it right back to bare aluminium so that the paint really sticks well to the engine and looks good. So a lot of extra nooks and crannies to get into with the drill attachments.
Okay, a couple of hours in now and it's looking a lot cleaner. Not quite ready to paint it yet. I'm going to still remove the sump sections. I'm going to take the oil pump off and change that crankshaft oil seal. Then I'm going to take the cylinder head off, clean it all up one last time, mask it off in a few places and then paint it. See you later.
Next, on with removing the studs out of the back of the block. I always like to sort of run a die around these and make sure they're nice and easy to sort of put the nuts on when we're building back up again, and then removing the head bolts.
Always feels really wasteful to just put these in the bin, but that's where they've got to go.
Bit of a cock up here. I sort of rotate the engine round with the bucket on that left hand side, and of course the oil flew out of the dip tube housing and went all over the floor. I had the bucket on the wrong side, but never mind. On with removing the upper sump section now. Load of M8 bolts here with a 12mm head. The two on the inside of the sump section with a washer, I tend to reuse those and put those back in because they spread the load nicely. And there you can see the oil baffle tray and the feed pipe. On this little clip you'll see me scraping off the sealant with the engine tilted, just so that the sealant falls on the floor and not in the engine, which is never good. Again, engine stands really handy for this. Just using a cheap soft wire brush here just for a little bit of extra cleaning. Nothing too aggressive. Oil pump's coming off here now. Again, I hit another unexpected snag here. A couple of the bolts were really seized and stuck in the aluminium here. You don't normally get a problem here at all, but again, I managed to find one that almost threaded or almost snapped before it came out. Damn, that was corroded in there. I thought that was going to be another snap bolt. So on with hooking out the old crankshaft oil seal out the oil pump and inserting the new one. You have to be very careful here that you install it really flush to the oil pump and make sure that you don't damage any part of the seal, and be very careful how you fit it back as well so that the spring doesn't fly out. On this little clip I'm just doing a very thin sort of finger wipe of Worth sealant on both sides of the oil pump gasket just to seal that back on, save buying a new one. Okay, back on with the oil pump. This is a bit fiddlier than it looks. You've got to be really careful here not to damage the seal as you put it back on, and of course you can't see the key on the oil pump onto the crank because it's behind the seal, so you've just got to try and locate it carefully there without damaging the seal. Notice I've just had to lift the edges of the seal onto the crankshaft there just to get that on properly. Okay, so moving forward a bit now, we're almost at our next little piece of music, and we're on to some painting. So we're at the stage now where we're going to paint the block and the sump sections and bling that engine up a bit.
Okay, so I'm about 50 minutes into this, just over, and it's just about there. It's not quite ready for painting, but it's pretty close. It's quite an awkward shape to clean, as you can see. Every time you turn it over or move it, you find there's another bit to clean. And just getting into all the awkward little nooks and crannies, getting it right back to bare aluminium is fiddly. And although I have got a shot blast cabinet, a little one, you know, a little DIY one, it's not really good enough to do it. And also you'd still have to clean it before you put it in the shot blast cabinet anyway. So it's kind of pointless. You may as well just clean it and do it. Just clean it with brushes, as I've done. So there we go.
Okay, I'm making some progress on the sump sections here. It looks slightly brutal what I'm doing with the drill here in fast motion, but basically all I'm doing is using a drill just to clean out the silicone sealant out of the screw holes. So on the 6mm bolts I use, there's actually around about a 7mm hole there, so I use a 6.5mm drill, and on the upper sump section I use an 8.5mm drill to clean out those holes.
Okay, so I think we're good to go on this one now. It's looking pretty clean to me. I think that's ready to paint. Super.
Okay, so I'm mixing some 2K acrylic paint here. You really don't need to buy anything that says specifically engine paint on it. But if you buy a 2-pack paint, you know, that's got 2K hardeners in it, that'll pretty much cover you for painting an engine. You wouldn't be able to use that on an exhaust because that's much hotter, but for engine it's absolutely fine. You can see in this clip here I've got my both sump sections screwed together just with a couple of screws, and then I'm just going to work my way around bit by bit and give it a nice coating. And for the remainder of this job, I'll see you all in part 2 for the rebuild. Bye!